Hello, avid readers, book nerds, or casual observers, and welcome to the read-along brought to you by the Lit Round Table. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Anna, and today we'll be talking about The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. We are working through chapters 15 through 18 today, so starting with Flatheads and ending with Tea and Vengeance.
Which goes all the way through part 1.
Yes, very exciting.
So next time we get to start part 2.
Yeah. Be curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, I did peek at, I think the next chapter is actually a new POV. I think it is a character that we haven't had because it seems like it's a female. So we have not been blessed with a female POV yet in this novel.
Get those ladies, man.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Speaking of new POVs,
yeah,
chapter 15,
exactly.
Flatheads, has a new POV character.
Yeah. A
Dogman.
Yeah, a character that has only been mentioned and referenced, and we have never actually met.
And my first comment was, I thought he was dead? ?
I think that Logan thinks that they're dead.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which he had evidence to suggest that they were.
And his crew thinks that he's dead.
Yes. Everyone thinks each other's dead.
So basically, the big takeaway from this chapter is just, it's basically like an introductory chapter. Here's the old crew, here's everyone's kind of quirk, here's how they interact, and they're not dead.
Yeah.
Dogman's cool. He's got a real good nose, as his name would suggest.
Yes, I'm glad we have clarification on what that means now.
Yeah. There's 3 trees, which he is kind of the de facto leader now that they think Logan is, as they say, in the mud.
Yes.
There's a couple other characters whose names escape me. There's Grim, who's like the angsty, angry, I want to be the leader, but I'm not kind of character. And he's good with a bow. There's the big brute character, whose name I forget. I think they call him Low or something.
I was listening and I didn't get them all written down. Would you like me to look it up?
Nah, it's okay. Basically, I would know it again if I saw it. But basically, is a really big introductory chapter, and just it's basically there to let us know, hey, these people are not dead, and they are moving in the same general direction as the rest of the characters, as in Logan, because Logan and Bayaz are also moving south, and that's the direction they decided to move as well. So I'm thinking we're going to see those groups collide.
Technically these guys are ahead of them, right? Did we go back in time for this? I'm a little confused on the timeline.
I did not get the impression that this was back in time. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see. If they do meet up, then I guess no, it was not back in time.
Okay. The other character name you were looking for was Black Dow.
Black Dow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's a character who's not good at fighting at all, but he got to take out Ashanka, and he was like, I got one, and everyone's happy for him. It was funny. We also
was it Forley?
Yeah, Forley. He kind of strikes me as the accountant.
Yes.
He's the bookkeeper.
Yes.
The nerdy bookkeeper with nerdy specs. He's got I imagine him with glasses. But anyway, we do also get to see them fight some flatheads, which we hadn't really seen them at all since the prologue. So we got to see more of that, and they just seem kind of orc-like,
Yeah. My suspicion is that they are cannibalistic. Do you get that impression?
Yeah.
Or that they eat humans?
Yeah.
Because then, we'll get to this, but in the last chapter of this section, they talk about the second law. And so I think that the Flatheads have maybe broken the second law. That's my hypothesis.
That is a great theory that I did not consider.
See, I made a connection this week.
Good job.
We'll get more into that later. But That's my thought.
Cool. So yeah, that's Flatheads. We meet the old crew, and they fight some Flatheads, and they decide to move south.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, next chapter, we're back with our boy Jezel for The Course of True Love.
And he is having a time.
Yeah.
This is just another example of him throwing a fit, basically. I felt like.
Yeah, and then he did exactly what I knew he was going to do by the end of the chapter.
Yep.
And that is he is now fueled by pure spite.
Yes. I mean, Artie and Glocta pulled some classic reverse psychology on him, and he fell right into it. Yeah.
So we finally got to see Glocta interact with Jezel and like kind of knock him down a few pegs. Like Jezel fancies himself this witty intellectual conversationalist who can like banter his way through any social interaction, but then Glocta just kind of like verbally spanks him. Like
yeah, he gives him a real hard time.
I found that very entertaining.
It was well deserved, in my opinion. Now, if we could just find someone to knock Glocta down a few pegs.
Yeah. Well, I think the life has done that pretty thoroughly.
I think Glocta actually just needs someone to love him.
Oh.
It's a very different needs.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's going to get that. He's such a nasty individual.
He just needs some TLC.
Yes. He needs a mom.
Let's see. Yes, reverse psychology. So he talks to Glocta, and the thing about Galacta's conversation that really made me laugh was when Jezel was like, "Oh, doing this fencing thing every day is torture," and then he catches himself right after he says torture, like because he forgot who he's talking to, and Galacta's like, "Oh, really? It's like torture, is it?"
You want to hear about torture? Let me tell you about torture, buddy.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end and the giving end. This is far from torture.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really fascinating interaction. And I'd say Galacta's mission was thoroughly accomplished.
Yes. And then he goes, is he back to his house? Where does he go?
Well, he's fuming. He's fuming about Glocta, and he wants to go vent to Major West. So he goes over to his buddy Major West's house. And Major West is not there, but guess who is?
His sister. And it's morning, and she is drunk-ish.
Yeah.
Artie is in rare form.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes on a little tirade about how, because she's not someone with a title, nobody looks at her, she's just ignored, everyone writes her off, but she's so much more than just like this country bumpkin and blah, blah, blah. She's having a moment. She's having a little pity party. Mm-hmm. And then she, oh my gosh, I just drew a blank on his name. Jezel tells her that he's gonna quit fencing. He's just decided that it's not for him. And then she's like, "Oh my gosh, I won the bet. My brother and I had a bet, and he said you were gonna stick it out, and I said you weren't going to, and you're not. So I get 10 whatever their currency is."
Yeah.
And she's really happy about it. And he's like, "Oh my gosh." And then he had the thought that she should be honored that she had been noticed. And I was like, "Sir, your misogyny is showing again."
Oh man, that was a really bad like inner tirade that he had where he was so mad at her for just like existing.
Yeah. It was really bad. I was like, wow, you are awful. So
toxic. Like she should be grateful that I even like hang out with her at all, because you're dumb, you stink, you're a girl, you have cuties. Well,
she has no title, she doesn't have anything. Why would I be interested in her?
Like she should be grateful that
so gross.
She's so not worth my time, but I still hung out with her anyway. He was like,
yeah.
Oh, it was like the words I can't express just
so
how
bad.
Gross I felt reading his inner dialogue. But it's dumb because like I still want to root for him because I want him to do better.
I don't. I want him to do better. I want him to have like some good character growth. But if he ends up dying, I'm not going to be real mad about it.
Yeah. He'll probably have
Which
some
is
amazing
terrible.
he'll probably have amazing character growth and then die.
Right.
You know.
Yes, that's always how it is.
Because
Right?
this is a book.
Yeah, just like Boromir. Seems like total garbage. And then
Redeems himself, and then
yeah.
the feared one will
That's
get him.
sorry, spoiler for Lord of the Rings. I don't know.
If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings yet, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So after the interaction with Artie, Major West shows up and he just storms out. Major West is like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I was coming to see you." He's like, "Oh, well, what is it?" "It can wait. Never mind." And he just leaves.
I'm gonna train better and harder and faster than I've ever trained before. Yeah.
Cue the Rocky training sequence.
Yes. Except it went to the next chapter. But yeah.
Yeah, but
That's what's in store for him.
So he is being fueled by spite at others' expectations of him quitting. He is now going to actually put in the effort.
Yeah.
So we'll see
This
how
will be
that
good.
goes for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the next chapter, we get your boy Glocta.
How dogs are trained. That's the name of this chapter.
Yeah. This one was like the shortest, I think, of all of them.
I think
And so
so.
I kind of remember the least, but I don't know if it's because I remember the least about it because I was like tired or if it's just because it was so short. But I'll let you lead the way on this one.
Bummer. My big note on this one is that they're interrogating Hornlack, and he is naked.
Right.
And so he's
Oh,
like,
right,
why
right.
can't I wear my clothes? And he's like, because I don't remember what his reasoning was. Something to do with torturing.
It's some
And then they torture
psychological thing.
Yes.
Yeah, the chapter. I was just trying to remember how the chapter started because I couldn't remember. They were like at a dock, and he was trying to get on a boat, and then the sailors turned against him, and then he's like, "I paid you. What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, the Inquisition paid me more, so sorry."
Yeah.
And they turn him over to Glocta.
Yeah. Yep. And then Glocta has his torturing session, which is, of course, gross and psychologically disturbing. And he's talking about how you train dogs to bark. And so he's torturing this poor Hornlack character, who's he's the mercer.
Right, he's some bigwig
Yeah.
in a guild.
Yeah. So he's training him to bark on command and basically do what Glocta says and make confessions.
Yeah.
So it's
And
gross.
he wants to parade this individual out in open council so that he can bark, you know.
Yeah.
He wants the whole world to hear this confession where he confesses to the conspiracy of hiring assassins to take out all those people that were on Glocta's list. So,
And he is genuinely surprised to hear that Glocta has these other two guys whose names I'm drawing a blank on. The first guy, Ruse, and then the assassin.
Yeah.
He's surprised to find out that he has both of them and has tortured them. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it. It wasn't there wasn't a ton of, I mean, it moved the plot forward with that plot line of like trying to figure out who hired the assassin and everything. So like,
Right.
I'm not sure what the game is with like having him confess in open council. I'm not exactly sure what the plan is there, or if that's supposed to like just shake things up and see who panics. And that's the big. I think he's trying to find the big wig behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But we'll see.
There
We'll
was
see what
there
happens.
was another like funny moment, like with the three
the practicals.
Frost, the practicals and Glocta, where someone was dead again, and they were like, "I don't think he's going to answer." so they just have an ongoing. We're going to make fun of dead people.
It was practical. What's his name? It's not Frost. It's the other one.
Severard.
Yeah. Because Severard was like, it says something about about him being dead, and then Glocta's like, yes, a crossbow bolt to the neck will do that to a man.
Yeah.
Get rid of him, please. And then he just like casually tosses him over the side into the water. Like,
Yeah.
they've done this before.
Yes, many times. It's their shtick.
Yeah.
It's gross, but it's their shtick.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And then we've got the final chapter, which was the longest one, and that
Yes.
was Tea and Vengeance.
Mm-hmm. So this is our Logan chapter.
Yes, and there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened in this one.
Yes.
So what were your big takeaways for the last
My
one?
biggest takeaway was that I wrote down how to say Kwai's name phonetically so that I wouldn't say it wrong again.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And then I also wrote down the second law, which is it is forbidden to eat the flesh of men.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because we know that Logan is already, well, we can assume that Logan is breaking the first law by talking to the ghosty ghouls that come to him. And we find out that the first magi, whatever, he cannot talk to those spirits. He doesn't have the gift, whatever that is.
Which is fascinating.
Yes. And yeah, so my guess, so when they said the second law, I was like, oh my gosh, we are going to have zombies. Freaking zombies.
Maybe. Maybe
but I think
like you said.
But I think the flatheads are maybe people that, because it would make sense that if there's a first law and second law that date back to like very early times in this world's history, that they would be related to ways of preserving humanity. But my guess is that these flatheads are a bastardization of humans because they haven't followed the first laws. Or first or second law. That's my hypothesis. I have no idea if that's accurate.
I think that is a astute observation, and I think I am on board with it because the flatheads seem to be in the north.
Yes.
Right? So the north is a very cold and harsh environment compared to down south, where the Union is. So I'm thinking Europe, where it's colder, people are more likely to, do desperate things to survive when it's a harsh environment, like pull a what's the Donner Party?
Oh, yes.
Pull a Donner Party. And when people are living up in like harsh environments up where it's really cold, I think they're probably more likely to do desperate things to try to survive, such as cannibalism. And so it would make sense if the flatheads are mostly up north because that's like where they come from. But it's also a possibility that they are some sort of magically created monster, because it's kind of implied that that is what the feared one is, the guy that's all like half tattooed and scary, because he gets mentioned in this chapter. And Baez says that Cowrib actually is they should not be underestimating her or treating her like she's not a threat, because he was like, actually, yeah, she knows what she's about, and she's actually kind of scary. So
yeah, that went the best possible way it could have gone. It could have gone very badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we find out from him that he's, he played it pretty cool that whole scene, but he was really stressed out.
Yeah, that seems like his shtick.
Play it cool and then later be like, by the way, that was scary.
We could have all died.
Really quickly. Yeah. Well, and Logan calls him out for like bending the knee to the king, and he's like, you're right, in hindsight I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have handled that differently.
Right.
Which was kind of funny.
Yeah, so that was pretty much just their interaction riding south, because that's, I had to like try to think back, okay, why are they riding south again? Oh yeah, because like he sent a herald down to the capital to say, I'm coming, and now that's what's happening. They're going south. Yes. Okay.
They're doing what they said they were going to do.
Right. But on their way, they get ambushed by some old pals of Logan's, and it's not Dogman. and the group. It is people that now work for Bethid, or however you say his name, the King in the North.
Yes. Who are the same people that Logan had fought against when he was on Bethid's side.
Right.
So they've switched positions now.
Interesting dynamic there.
Yes. Very.
But Logan gets to try out this new sword that he got, which seems like maybe it's some kind of enchanted because it went clear through like multiple layers of fur and chainmail and into someone's torso. So like super sharp sword, maybe?
And then it had no signs of any kind of damage, which like that kind of hit would seriously damage a normal sword.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They fight the people and eventually get in a situation where they're all cornered, and it seems hopeless and that all is lost. And then Bayaz throws a fireball. A little Dragons of Autumn Twilight reference there for the read along,
or just D&D in general reference.
Yeah, and then for the D&D fans. So yeah, then Bayaz casts Wall of Fire and incinerates some fools. That was a very scary couple of paragraphs there, because it sounded like not only did everything just catch fire, it was like raging inferno. Like people that were caught in the fire did not last long.
No.
Like it usually takes more than a couple seconds to burn to death. Mm-hmm. You would think.
Yeah, I have no personal experience.
Me neither. So yeah, like riders and horses and all got like super lit up by this fiery spectacle. Except for one guy who was wearing gloves. It seemed like everything made out of wood in a certain parameter just was set ablaze, including like the hafts of people's spears and axes and stuff. So it was crazy. But there was one guy that was wearing gloves holding onto his spear, so he managed to actually keep his wits about him and charge at him. And then Logan had to defend our good friend Kwai from being shish kebabbed by
Kwai.
said spearmen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he saved him again.
Yeah. Yep. And then something. Who was it that he put out of their misery at the end?
Oh, that was the head honcho dude. Was his name like
of
Cole?
the other side?
Black
or
Toe.
Of the good guys?
He was one of the ones working for Bethid, but it was he kind of got an honorable send off there at the end, because he was like, yeah, that's regrettable that I'm working for this guy. Yeah. And he was like, I was just so tired. I was just so done. And this was the easy route. And I was just tired. And Logan's like, that's fair. Like there was acknowledgement. Yeah. There was acknowledgement that he's kind of a victim of circumstance. Mm-hmm. But he got like crushed by his horse and his hands got burned. So he was just going to die slowly and painfully. So Logan just finished it.
Yeah. Well, and he asked for it too. He sort of, right? He did. Just take me out, man.
Because even if he doesn't die a slow, painful death, when Bethid finds him, he's going to be tortured to death. Like,
yeah,
just because that's how he rolls. So
yeah, because Bethid's pretty bad dude.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, there was kind of a funny interaction in this chapter between Kwai, Baez, and Logan.
Really quickly, I just want to point out that after the massive firestorm was cast by Baez, he looked really winded, and like he was visibly shaking as he dismounted from his horse. So like the magic of this world does have like there is a magic meter like to these characters.
Right. Which is good. There should be like physical consequences to big exports of magic use.
Right. So there is like a stamina aspect of this stuff. So yeah, I just found that interesting. So anyway,
yes, thank you for
back to the interaction. That
I want to end on a lighter note since
rewind.
So there's an interaction between Kwai, which I'm saying his name correctly this time.
You are.
Baez and Logan, where Baez is like quizzing Kwai on the different plants that they're encountering. And the first one he quizzes him on, he's like, what is this plant? Takes Kwai a long time to come up with it. He doesn't actually come up with it, and Baez tells him, and then he's like, it was right on the tip of my tongue. And he's like, well, if it's on the tip of your tongue, you can tell me what it does. And Kwai was like, yes, I cannot.
He's like, is it for aches and pains of the joints? No.
Yeah. And he's like, no, it doesn't do anything. It's just a plant. And they're like,
I thought that was funny.
Yes. And then Logan's like annoyed, like, why do you bother knowing the names of plants if they don't do anything? Which I don't remember what the response was to that. But
well, the response was basically Kwai quoting the entire first paragraph of that giant book they read, which is basically just like, oh, us magi have to learn how the world works because that's how you master your craft and all this stuff. It was like some long, eloquent answer, and then Logan's just like, I've never understood a thing about anything that's ever happened to me up until this point.
Which is fair because he's had a very bizarre life.
Yeah.
Just the parts that we have seen have been very strange.
Mm-hmm. They're like the epitome of like book smarts and street smarts. Like Logan is very just like tired of the world, and like the magi are very like studious and want to learn about the world. So it's just a very interesting dynamic that they have. Yes.
And Kwai is very tired like a grad student is.
Yeah.
And then the next plant, Kwai still can't. He's like, he's like studying it, and Logan goes, oh, I know exactly what that is because it's good for this thing. I don't remember what the thing is, but he tells him like, oh, it's this, quietly, so Baez isn't here.
Quietly.
And then Kwai is like, oh, it's this, and Baez is like, what does it do? And Logan tells him, and he goes, oh, it does this. And he goes, very interesting because we don't call it by that name. Only people in the north call it by that name, or wherever Logan's from. And it's pretty funny. I had a good little chuckle.
And he's like, Nine Fingers, have you ever considered a life as a magi? I might have an apprenticeship spot openings.
And Logan's like, heck no, man.
Nope.
Never, not once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Something tells me that might change. We'll see.
Something tells me that he is already a magic user and just doesn't know it.
Probably.
Because he can speak to the spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is like some kind of chosen one, whatever that means for this world.
Right. Yeah. So how are we... so that's the last chapter. How are we feeling about the whole of part one? Part one of the Blade itself. How are we feeling? Thoughts, concerns, frustrations?
This is so not my usual...
This is not your usual book.
Yes. So I am struggling with it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more political than I normally choose to read in my fantasy. I like the Logan chapters I find very fascinating because they're magic and they're adventure, and like that's what I want out of fantasy.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the character development. It's like 80% of the political stuff and 20% of the stuff that I like crave in a fantasy story. So that's where I'm struggling right now, but I think that eventually that's going to level out. At least I hope. Mm-hmm. And characters don't have to be good people, but I want one.
Yeah.
I want one good person.
Yeah, you want one character that's not a jerk.
Right. And which we have West, but he's only had like 1 or 2 POB chapters.
Yeah.
So, and I like Logan, but he's ambiguous still.
And his character is interesting because I can't figure out, because him and Baez do have a touching moment, that last chapter too, where Baez basically tells him like, you have compassion, like you saved Kwai. You're calculating. You don't just rush into a fight. You only fight when you have to, when you know it's the only option. Like he's basically trying to reassure Logan that like, no, you're a good person.
Right. You're not garbage like you think you are, honestly.
Right. But I think Logan is very, very much Byronic hero where there's some self-loathing and some regret, and he wishes that he wasn't the Bloody Nine. But
yeah,
because he apparently used to be the champion of Bethid before the Feared One. That got mentioned briefly. So he's probably done some nasty stuff.
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
Thus, everything you said is totally fair. For your feelings are valid. For
but what are your thoughts? This was your pick.
Yeah, for part 1. So I think that it is like a masterclass in character development.
I'll agree with that.
And really getting into a character's head. I don't know if I've read a book where I have been so inside of someone's head, like Glokta. Him specifically, because he gets a lot of the internal dialogue. I mean, we still do with Jezzel and Logan as well, but it's not, I feel like, quite to the same level as Glock does. It's very interesting. And I know that that's what everyone raves about with Joe Abercrombie, with all his books, is like the character development and just the character, like him writing characters is very, very well done. So I knew that was going to be the strongest aspect. I would say in the triangle of storytelling, that is character, setting, and plot, character is the strongest. Plot was weak to start and is still fairly weak.
I agree.
Just because things they haven't like come together. The whole first part has been really setting the stage.
Yeah, it feels very disjointed still. Which,
With
that
there's
happens.
like some overlay, there's some crossover with the characters, but it hasn't been, it's been purely circumstantial. It's been nothing meaty, like plot-wise.
Right. Yeah. Which, and when I think of other contemporary fantasy writers like Martin, he does the same thing. Like, you've got Danny over here doing who knows what, and then, people up in the north not interacting at all with what's happening in King's Landing. Like, that's kind of a common thing that happens in modern fantasy now, I think.
Is that like a high fantasy trope or epic fantasy?
I would say it's an epic fantasy trope where you're covering, like, vast amounts of land.
Okay.
It's not like my favorite thing. Yeah. But I understand why it happens, because people are trying to create these big worlds with diverse characters and lots of
I would say
pieces.
you run the risk when you do that of the story becoming less intimate, because you're jumping around from character to character so much that you can't hang out with that character long enough to really you know what I mean, to like really connect. But I feel like the character development in this book is so strong that I haven't really felt that way, that I haven't been able to
connect to the characters.
Yeah, even though they're like all but one are terrible people.
I mean, it's the same with Martin though, right? Like, even though his characters are all over the place, you can feel connected to them.
Yeah. Even
and
when
a lot of them
things
are also garbage.
Yeah. So I understand when I was reading the reviews for this book going in, I understand why people compare it to Martin and Game of Thrones. I definitely understand that. And I understand why some people like this more than Game of Thrones, because there are less characters to keep track of.
That is true. I will say that Game of Thrones has more, even though it's very politically driven, there is still a lot of the like adventuring, swashbuckling type stuff that I enjoy. Right.
And I would say Game of Thrones has setting down pat. Like where this is a masterclass in character, Game of Thrones is a masterclass in setting, where George R. R. Martin is a medievalist. Like, he has obviously studied medieval culture, and he modeled it off of that, and he did it very well. And you're watching all the characters interact in the wheelhouse of the Game of Thrones. The last thing in this one, like, we talked about character, plot, setting in this one is probably the weakest of the three to me. But
that makes me feel better, because I was having a hard time with it, but as we have established, I struggle with setting anyway.
Well, they haven't really given you much to have a hard time with.
Well, maybe, okay. I just assume now anymore that I'm just setting blind. And so if I don't know what's happening in the setting, I just assume it's my issue that I like zoned out for that part.
No,
this is good to hear that it's not just me.
No, it's pretty weak on setting. Okay. It's getting better. Like we're getting these little name drops of like, oh, she's from the true north, whatever that means. So there's like some like things are getting a little deeper. I still don't really care at all about this union of like the kingdoms. I have no idea where it is on a map. I don't think this book even has a map in the beginning, does it?
I don't think so.
That'd be helpful. I wish it did, honestly. If this book had a map in the beginning, that would have helped a lot with the setting to me.
Let me look at the end. Does the end?
That'd be a weird place for it, but maybe.
I mean, I think Lord of the Rings maps are all in the back.
But not The Hobbit. The Hobbit, they're all in the front.
Yeah,
nope.
Yeah.
I don't see any maps. If this came with a map, I think the setting issue wouldn't be as bad, because I am having a difficult time figuring out where the heck everyone is, other than they're in the north and they're in the south. Like when they're in the big council chamber during the open council where everyone's talking and there's like all these people from all these different places, I'm like, I don't know where that is. Are we on a big land continent? Are we on, I mean, I know we're not on an island, but are there islands? Like,
but are we on Australia?
Is there an ocean?
Is it Australia of the North?
Yeah.
With the Arctic?
And I feel like maybe that's just Joe Abercrombie not wanting the story to get lost in setting, and he wants to focus more on character, which is valid. That's his choice. I just wish there was a little more meat to chew on with the setting, and I want the plot to actually, like, it started moving, but it's like when you're in a car and you're stopped, your foot's on the brake, right? It felt like our foot was on the brake for a couple of chapters, and then we just took our foot off the brake, and then we just started rolling. And I feel like we're still just rolling, and we haven't quite put a foot on the gas yet. And I want to put a foot on the gas of the plot.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that any of these chapters, except maybe the last one, felt like we were moving the plot along a whole lot.
Yeah, like we were learning things, but it wasn't everything that was going to happen, like, or that was bound to happen regardless, kind of happened, you know?
Right.
So I will say I'm excited. I'm excited about his old crew still being alive, because I'm excited for them to meet up, because I think Logan's kind of going through a transformation right now in not being so destructive or loathing or whatever. So I think he's going to kind of have an aha moment of, oh, yeah, I'm not such a terrible dude. And then his old crew's going to show up, and it's going to be kind of an obstacle for him, because he's going to be reminded all of a sudden, because they're going to be talking about all the stuff they used to do. Right. I think that's
and I think they exclusively refer to him as the Bloody Nine. Right. So, yeah.
And they probably followed him because he was so strong and a good fighter, and he doesn't. It seems like he is reluctant to pick up the sword nowadays.
Yeah.
So.
Which, fair.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with all that. But yeah, I think those are my thoughts. I think the character is the strongest part of this story so far.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm dying for more plot and setting, though. We have to get more plot and setting in part 2.
You know, setting is hit or miss for me anyway, but more plot would be awesome.
Yeah.
and enough setting that I feel grounded would be nice. Because even like in the other books we've read, like The Lies of Locke Lamora, I know that setting was very important, and I did feel grounded in the setting, even if I didn't, like, even though I clearly missed some like key components until later on, I did eventually get them.
You did.
Which is like really all you can ask for.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I'm not so far feeling like that revelation is coming with this book, but I'm also very aware that it's very outside of my usual wheelhouse for choice. So.
Yeah, I would say of the characters, setting, and plot, if we can, like you said, if we can at least get some plot going, I think that takes priority over setting for me. I love setting. I love good setting, but I think that we need more conflict and we need more plot, because right now the whole, like, the King in the North versus the Union thing, I'm not really that invested in it. Like, I will only become invested if Jezal has to actually fight that feared one guy.
True.
Which could happen. That might have been a tease earlier. They might be setting up for that.
Yeah, it could
Or maybe Logan has to fight him, because that was kind of teased with him. He used to be Bethed's champion. So
I'm going to guess that the feared one is going to end up fighting a lot of dudes.
yeah.
It'll just be a matter of who survives.
We might get like a Cowrib versus Bayaz showdown. Very Morgan Le Fay versus Merlin.
Ooh, I like this reference.
Yeah. Arthurian legend.
Yes, I love it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that would be really cool. That would be really cool.
So yeah, but I am looking forward to what part 2 brings, and I have enjoyed what we've read so far. It is interesting structure. It is. There are moments that are odd, but
yeah. Do you know what I'm really hoping for? I'm hoping that Artie gets to become like super empowered.
The heroine that she deserves to be. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I want her to become that. I think she deserves it.
She could still be playing some kind of game with Jezal.
She totally could. Although she wasn't planning on him showing up in that moment, and she was drunk in the morning. So our girl's got some issues, but I think she can overcome them.
Yeah. We've all been there.
I mean,
I have not, but
I have not. I've never been drunk in the morning.
No.
I don't think I've ever been drunk ever. But I want her to like have this like moment where she like really comes into her own and can like be a powerhouse. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So.
Me too. Maybe she's that POV in the next chapter, because the next chapter is a female, I believe. That's what it seemed to be anyway. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it's Cowrib. I was looking for a name, but I couldn't find a name.
It is a girl.
Yep. Might be a totally new one, though. Who knows?
I don't think it's Artie.
No, I could tell that.
Interesting.
So we will see.
Ooh. I am excited. I think that this is someone we have never seen.
Sweet. I'm here for it.
I think we are in a different... I think we're in a different setting.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I think we are with sand people now.
What? Like deserty? Oh. What the heck?
Yeah, this is really different.
Okay.
I don't know, man. We might just get way more confused.
I'm going to have to read this whole trilogy just to figure out what the heck is happening.
I
mean, I will, because they're
funny.
good, but...
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, what do we have to read for next time?
For next week, we're going to start part 2, and we are going to read until we get to Barbarians at the Gate.
Ooh,
so again,
fascinating.
Yeah, so again, don't read Barbarians at the Gate, just read to it.
Okay. Stop when you see Barbarians.
Yep, at the gate, specifically.
Okay. I mean, if I saw a barbarian in real life, I'd stop whatever I was doing.
Well, that too.
And I'd be like, what? Anyway. All right. Well, that's part 1. We made it. We're a good chunk of the way. There's only 2 parts, right? Or is there 3?
I believe there's only 2 parts.
I was going to say, that seems like if there were 3 parts, those would be some short 2 parts.
Yes.
At the end. So,
yes.
She's a 2-parter.
Yeah.
Very good.
Very
Alrighty. Good. Well, I guess until then, happy reading.
And we'll talk at you next time.
Later.
Bye.